In this video, I'm going to show you how to sew a zippered pouch. You can really make any size of pouch that you want, but if you want to make one that's the same size as the one I'm making in this video, then you can follow the dimensions in these instructions. And you're going to need two fabrics, one outer fabric. Here I've used a thicker cotton canvas, and then also you'll need a lining, and I have used a pinstripe fabric. You're also going to need something for a pull tab, and here I've used some leather scraps, but you could also use ribbon. And you're also going to need one 12 to 14 inch zipper. Okay, so we're just going to begin with one piece of the outer fabric and just lay it down flat, and then you're going to place the zipper top side down right along the top edge of the fabric. And next you're going to lay the lining fabric on top of that, making sure that the top side of the outer fabric and the lining are facing each other, and making sure that everything is flush right along the top edge, and then pin it all together. Then sew that together using the zipper foot and leaving about 1/4 inch of seam allowance. When you're done stitching, just flip the fabric over the seam allowance so that the wrong sides of fabric are touching each other like you see here. Okay, next get out your second piece of outer fabric and lay it flat, and then you're going to put the piece that you just sewed together on top of that, making sure that both pieces of the outer fabric are facing each other and the zipper edge is flush with the new piece that you'll be sewing onto it. Then place the second piece of lining fabric on top of all that and make sure that the right sides of the lining fabric are facing one another. And then pin all of that together. And then you're going to sew that just the same way that you did on the other side. For the next step, you need to pull both sides of the outer fabric and the lining fabric away from the center of the zipper, and then you're just going to top stitch them together about 1/8 of an inch away from the zipper. And here you can see I'm using a walking foot, and I like to use that attachment because it keeps all the layers together so that you get a nice smooth finish. Okay, so now with the fabric pulled out to both sides, you want to open up the zipper about 2/3 of the way, and then you're going to pin the pull tab to the left-hand side and just below the zipper. And you want to make sure that the pull tab is facing inward and that the seam allowance is flush with the seam allowance of the pouch. Now you need to place both sides of the outer fabric facing each other and both sides of the lining facing each other. And this part is really important to get right. You need to make sure that the seam allowance with the zipper in it is pulled towards the outer fabric. And then you just want to pin the zipper together securely in that direction. And then do the same exact thing on the other side. And then having everything laid out flat and smooth and making sure that the edges are matching, you're just going to put pins all the way around the perimeter, except we're going to be leaving the opening on the bottom of the lining. So now it's time to sew all of this together, and you're going to be using the straight stitch, and I've left about 1/2 inch of seam allowance here, and you just want to go slowly over the zipper area because it's kind of thick there, and you'll be leaving an opening on the lining side that's about 3 to 4 inches wide. And then after you take all the pins out, you're going to just snip off the excess zipper so that it's flush with the seam allowance. And hopefully you can see this here. What I always do is another row of stitching along the pull tab just to make sure that it's really secure. Next, clip all the corners to about 1/4 of an inch away from the seam. And now for the fun part, this is where you get to turn the whole thing right side out, and using an iron and also a turning tool like this one, this is the Clover point-to-point turner. You're gonna use it to poke out the corners and iron everything smooth. And now you're gonna sew the opening shut. And to do that, I like to use a quilter's knot at each end of the line of stitching. If you don't know what a quilter's knot is, that's where you use the straight stitch, but you set the length to just a little tiny bit, almost to 0, and then you take about 3 or 4 stitches that way. And you're just gonna sew it shut about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Now the only thing left to do is to tuck the lining inside of the pouch, and then you're done. Thank you so much for being here, and let me know in the comments below how it goes sewing your pouch. You can connect with me on Instagram or in my Etsy shop, and I'll be leaving links for those below. And happy sewing!